gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Fuente and Meerapfel presents Meet the Professor. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Now, boy, do we have a treat for you today. Not only is it Fuente Friday, but we got a hell of a guest coming on the show today. Somebody who has experience beyond anybody's belief. Someone who's been in the industry forever. A friend, a partner, the one and only Señor Ernesto Perez Carillo. Ernesto, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoy this. I'm very excited about, being here. I go back so many years with, Carlitos, Jose, and yourself. So I think we have a lot to talk about, and I think it's going to be fun.
I have no doubt about it. And, just a little bit of behind the scenes. I was listening to Jose and Ernesto before the show went live, and I was just wondering how they just kept on going and going. We are not going to have enough time with an hour. We need about 3 weeks to get through chapter 1 of what they have to say. But before we get there, we are going to present the one and only Professor. Jose, Professor, how are you doing?
Everything is good. I mean, Ernie and I talk a lot. We've been friends for a very long time. I met Ernesto the first time in 1998. And then after the year 2020, when I started, 1999, I started with La Aurora. Ernie and I have had a very close relationship. And a lot of people know that I worked with him 3 years. And I have to say, it was a pleasure working with him, the family. I learned a lot with Ernesto. One of the things that that I really didn't give a lot of thought to before, I concentrated more on fillers and wrappers. And with Ernesto, I learned a lot about binders. But today, it's not about me. It's that we have today a living legend. To me, one of the most, how would you say, what is the word? One of the greatest master blenders of all time. I think anybody who has smoked a cigar from Ernesto knows that he takes his time, he blends in a totally different way, and for us, it's just a pleasure. I wonder where Carlito is. I hope he's still around.
I'm here.
Whoa, Papo, ¿qué pasa?
Hey.
Green on it. That looks awesome.
Listen, today, we're going to ask Ernesto some questions, but first of all, before I start asking some questions, I need Carlito to welcome his old friend of over 40 years and compatriota.
Yeah, that is so true. Now, Ernesto and I go back. God, he was, I think, from my, he's my oldest living friend in the cigar industry. No question. I remember back in the 70s when we used to be late at night in the factories. I was in Tampa, he was in Miami, and we used to speak hours over the phone just about this tobacco and that tobacco. What do you think about this? And what would you do if you were in this situation? And back and forth. And it's a relationship that I have the greatest respect and admiration for. Ernesto is one of the greatest tobacco men I've ever met in my life.
Thank you.
He's a natural. He does things the old school, old way, and I have the highest respect from him. To me, it's a huge honor that he's joining us in the program today, and we're able to share with the rest of the world.
Thank you very much, Carlito. That's very nice of you to say that. And it is true. We go back a long time, man. We got a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ernesto, a lot of people for many, many years have considered you. Jasper, please. Listen to Jasper. Where's Ernesto? Consider you as a person that, even though you for many years have been recognized, Hall of Fame and all that, but one of the things that I've learned in time, and Carlito can testify to this, in Miami for years and years after the people had to fled Cuba, people were making cigars for many years and the chinchalas and all that. And your father had that factory for a long time, and everybody knows all the struggles and all the things you guys went to. But in all honesty, after Cigar Aficionado did that piece on you, but before that, we have to understand that you went completely different from the way your father made cigars, and also everybody in Miami that were using a Connecticut wrapper, some Indonesia, and it was kind of a mild to maybe medium. And all of a sudden you started to use Sumatra, and now everything was history. So what made you say, like, Dad has been doing this for a while, but we need to change this around? Could you tell us a little bit about that, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, and again, this wasn't something that I, sat down and analyzed and, studied the market and all that type of thing. But I think that, my father and the Oliva family, Angel Oliva, go back a long time. And it was actually about the 1970s, I think it was. Now, he got sick in he had ALS, which was diagnosed in 1976. But before that, we used to go to, we used to drive up to Tampa. I had a little Falcon, a white and blue Falcon. And we go up to, on US 27 and go to Tampa. And I remember we used to go to the Oliva family, and I would just watch, And, I mean, to be around, Angel Oliva, Cucho Oliva, which was one of my mentors, you pick up things. And I remember it was around that time that they started, growing the Sumatra wrapper in Ecuador. And when I finally decided to, my father passed away in 1980, and I took over the company. I wanted to do something that was me. It was not something that was being done. And I, don't ask me why, but I think I was, in my family, I'm the first musician, or was the first musician. And, those days when we used to go to the Oliva warehouse, it was, we go there, we look at the different tobaccos, the Sumatra, and of course, I wasn't as experienced as my father was. But this was a tobacco that, that he started looking at it and using to a certain degree during that period. And I remember, once we get out of the, leave the warehouse, we go to the Columbia restaurant, have lunch there. And that was like, a treat also. So when I, took over the company in 1980, I felt I had to do something different. And the Sumatra wrapper, which at that time was not that popular, was one of the things that I really wanted to, start working with. Now, it took me a long time to really understand and know how to blend with that particular Sumatra wrapper. And I never forget, in 1982, I started going to the RTDAs, which were the call at that time. And I never forget, I was blending with the different binders. And we talked about that many times, Jose. And there was something missing. Even though I was using the Sumatra wrapper, I was using, the fillers at that time were mostly Dominican, Brazil. At times there were some Puerto Rican and some Costa Rica fillers. And I remember being there, and that's when I first met, I met a lot of the, the Fuentes, the Carlos Fuentes, Carlito, Frank, from Hoya Monterey, Villazon, all those guys. And I started, asking a lot of questions, and I learned a lot, from asking questions of these people, which, were really my mentors. And also here in Miami, there was a lot of chinchales, and I would go by and see the different ways that they made cigars or whatever. But it was very interesting because it took me a while to really, get to understand the Sumatra wrapper. It's a wrapper that, is one of my favorite wrappers. And, but you have to know how to blend it with it. And I think the binder is a very important aspect of that particular wrapper. So it wasn't something that I just started using it right away. No, it took me years to really understand that particular tobacco. And I think with any tobacco, it's like that, it takes time for you to really understand how those tobaccos work with each other, how it works with the different binders and the different wrappers. And I just wanted to do something different. You know, I didn't want to be seen as, you know, you're the son of Ernesto Perez Carillo, and, you know, keep doing what you do. And I think that's really what, to a certain degree, set, you know, our little company apart from what was going on in Miami at that time. I also had, you know, a lot of experience looking at the cigar makers that my father had at that time. I'm talking back, he opened up in 1968. I started working with him about 1970. And I would see the different ways that they would bunch, that they would roll the cigars. I mean, at that time, there was a couple called Enrique and Onelia Valdez. I'll never forget those two guys, those two people, because they were about 75, 80 years. And they used to make the bunch with rubber bands. And, you know, sometimes I tell people this and they say, what do you mean? I mean, that was something that was unique because every cigar came out basically the same, you know? I mean, the same ring gauge. It was incredible. And so when you see that artistry, and it, you know, it just blows your mind what this industry is about. And I've seen the evolution, you know, from Miami, from those people. Then we had the, you know, the Mariel, where we got other cigar makers, and you can see that how the industry, I guess, or the way of making cigars evolved, you know, dating back to those years when I started with my father. I remember they used to make a cigar called Palma Mallorca, and that was my favorite size because, you know, I was seeing art being made right there in front of my eyes. So it was incredible. But, you know, getting back to the Sumatra, you know, it was a process. You know, and a lot of people nowadays, they say, well, you know, let's make a cigar, and they try different blends, you know. And Jose, you know, you work with me for a long time, and you know how that works. You know, it's a question of going through different blends, different binders, different fillers, add a leaf, take away a leaf, add half a leaf. It's a never-ending process. So, you know, I guess at the end of the day, if you want to make a cigar, anybody can make a cigar. But to make a great cigar, it takes time.
Without a doubt. I mean, those were interesting times. So Ernesto, okay, so the beginning is there. You struggled. You wanted to be a musician in the States. Your dad got sick. You came back. You started changing ways of making cigars, blending cigars. So all of a sudden, what happens? You're on the cover of Cigar Aficionado, and you tell the story that all of a sudden you were going to the show. A lot of people didn't show up. So one day, I don't remember what year, what show, all of a sudden
92.
You're going back to your booth, 92, and you're seeing the line that you just said, what the hell is happening? So tell us a little bit about the boom and how it felt after so many years going to the show and selling, but not enough. Then all of a sudden you're kind of a celebrity. I don't think you're still a celebrity, but kind of a celebrity.
Well, listen, it was a shock, you know, because, you know, to go from basically, and a lot of people don't realize, you know, things just don't happen. You know, you have to be prepared. When things happen, you know, you're prepared to take advantage of it. But in my case, you know, it was shocking because, you know, after almost 10 years of going to the different shows and not really, you know, I think I keep telling the story. My biggest order at one time was $600. And then all of a sudden that first day, you know, within, I don't know, $25,000. And from there, it just kept growing and growing every day. And I wasn't, did I feel, you know, I felt shock. But at the end of the day, it was something I think the industry needed for us, you know, for this industry to is what it, you know, for it to be what it is today. So I think when I really got a grasp of what was happening, because I wanted to stay in Miami, you know, I had my kids, my wife and all that. And I remember back, and I think it was 85 or something, you know, like Carlito said, we were talking a lot and all that type of stuff on the phone, and they had gone there in 1980. So, they, you know, every time I would visit them, they would say, Ernesto, you got to move down here. You know, you got to calm down. And then finally in 1996, I made the decision to go to Dominican Republic. And, you know, and I'm not saying this because Carlitos here, but, you know, they've always supported me. You know, I needed molds, I needed whatever I needed. You know, they were there for me to help me in the beginning. And I remember when I went down there, all I had, because you couldn't get tobacco anywhere. And all I had was, I think in Miami was like 70 bales. And I said, I still had the factory in Miami, but I needed tobacco also for Dominican Republic. So I sent some tobacco down to Dominican Republic, and we started working, I think with what, eight couples or something like that. Eventually, when I started to, you know, get a little bit better known, because like I said, it was very difficult to get tobacco there at that time during the boom. And, you know, I had some connections, but it was mostly through, you know, guys here in Miami and through David Perez, who I used to buy their Nicaraguan tobacco from. This was back in 1992 when I started buying tobaccos from him, 92, 93. But anyway, so we started there with I think it was like 8 pairs. And suddenly I started getting, you know, ton tobacco. I started getting more material, and I couldn't get over 8 pairs. Now, the reason for that was, you know, when I got to Dominican Republic, I said, you know, we got to keep doing what we did in Miami, because that's, you know, what made us successful. So every cigar maker had to do the triple cat, had to do the entubado, had to do other things I was making in Miami. And the demand was there. I was still running in Miami. We still had cigar makers in Miami, but I couldn't get that factory to really get going. So one day, a very good friend of mine, and Carlitos, you know, it's like another brother, Carlito, Julio Fajardo, may he rest in peace. You know, he came to me, he says, you know, Cubano, you got to learn something, man. When you're in Rome, you got to do what the Romans do. So forget about, you know, what you did in Miami. Forget about how you cigar makers work in Miami, and get with it here in Dominican Republic, because this is a different country. And it was incredible. You know, we started putting in the Lieberman machines. We started working in pairs. And within, I don't know, I guess you could say probably within 3 months, we had over, at one time we had like 279 people working in the factory. And I would say, you know, a big percentage of that were cigar makers. So, I mean, it's a question, and I look back and I ask myself, you know, would I have done this on my own if I hadn't had the support, you know, of families like the Fuente family, you know, the support of my family, and, you know, other growers down there like Quisqueya Tobacco that helped me out a lot, Alfredito, you know. So it was a risk to a certain degree, but I felt that there was no way I could fail, because I had these people that were, you know, there to help me. And, you know, old man Fuentes, what can I say about him? You know, he's like another father. May he rest in peace, because we love that guy. And now that I don't love you, Carlito, I love you too, brother. Pero tú sabes, you're much younger than I am.
Yeah, of course, man, of course.
You know, the funny.
But I remember, Carlito, remember that time you picked me up in Puerto Plata, and we were driving back. You had like a green Jeep or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Man, that's a long time. That's a long time ago.
That's a long ride. And all of a sudden, a rock hits hits the windshield, and it breaks open, and we have glass all over us going back to Santiago.
That's right.
What
That's
days,
not
man.
the first time. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, what days, man.
No, those were special days. But one thing I want to say, of all the years that I've known Ernesto has a reputation, is known just to be exactly the way you see him today. As an honest, open, humble human being. And Ernesto talks about, you know, adapting to the Dominican Republic and making changes. But one thing he didn't change was his work ethics. Ernesto worked around the clock and deserves all the success that he's obtained and more, because he's a tobacco man. He loves tobacco. And, you know, we're just fortunate to have people like Ernesto in our industry, who's creative and is always trying to push the envelope and make it better each day. So, yeah, we had some really great times, man. I don't know if physically, if we could go through those times again. Things were crazy, man. Yeah, broken windshield, driving through the mountains and everything. No,
That's right.
Crazy. In those days, man, we were fearless, you know, or not too intelligent, one of the two. But we didn't know the difference. But yeah, no, I remember those days, man. I remember stopping in the middle of the road to eat chicharrones and pork, you know, not knowing what the hell we were eating or whatever. I mean, those were good days, man. They were good days. We both were a lot younger, with both of us with vision and ambition and you know, wanting to grow and you know, just do the best we can. So the one thing that we have a lot in common, and if I were to say there's one person in the industry that, and I guess it has a lot to do, you know, where we come from. You know, he mentions people like Lucho Oliva and Angel Oliva. These are my mentors. This is where I learned also. So in the sense, you know, we kind of learned from the same book, and he mentioned the Perez family, who's very, very close to both of us. And you know, Silvio Perez, Alfredo Perez, you know, it goes back generations. And if I have to pick someone in the industry that I would say that is closest to my way of thinking, and as far as making cigars and our background and everything, it would have to be Ernesto Perez Carillo. I really consider him more than a friend, as a brother, and someone that, you know, has been through the struggle. You know, we've gone through the same struggle, and
Exactly.
continue to go through the same struggle. Every day is a new surprise and a new challenge. But you know, you see Ernesto, you hear him, and that's who he is. And he's loved. He's one of those people that are loved by everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well,
man.
ladies and gentlemen, my friends, what you're witnessing is history right now. This is what the show is all about. And it is very rare, and in my lifetime, to witness such fraternity, such love and respect between people, and that this is being done privately, that the behind the scenes are being brought over the scenes through the net to your households and to each and every one of you is very, very special. So we can only applaud. However, there are so many questions coming in, and we're going to have to start answering some of them. There's I don't even know where to start, but I want to get Alex on the line, because Alex asked a beautiful question to Ernesto. Alex, can you hear us?
Hi, what's up, everybody? Good morning.
What's
Good
up,
morning.
Good morning,
Canada?
Alex.
Now, we got to warn Ernesto that Alex is our Canadian compatriot. And Alex has been trying to nail the professor for the last month and a half that the show's been going on. Alex, have you succeeded yet?
Oh, I'll never succeed.
And he's humble.
I got to keep learning from him.
All right, Alex, shoot.
All right, it's an honor to talk to you, Ernesto.
Thank you, Alex.
And I have a question. Before your big successes, no doubt your cigars were great already, but what were the materials or the processes that you were dreaming of being able to implement in your cigars?
Well, that's a good question, because, you know, like I was mentioning before, you know, when we were in Miami, basically the tobaccos that we used were Dominican, you know, some Brazilian, Cameroon wrapper, Connecticut wrapper. Later in the 80s, I started using some broadleaf, which is funny because, you know, that's a wrapper that nowadays is very difficult to come by. And it's funny because at those times, you know, nobody wanted that wrapper. And I used to buy that wrapper for about $2.25 a pound from the Plasencia family here in Miami. And now it's ridiculous what they are asking for it. But anyway, but I think that, you know, smoking different cigars, because, you know, Carlito, I gotta go back to an experience that that I had with Carlitos and Cucho. When I go to Tampa, I would stay at Cucho's house and Cucho Oliva. And then one day Carlito comes in and he offers me a Flor de Orlando. Remember that?
I do remember that same night. I remember it,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah. And that cigar was made, I believe, in your Nicaraguan factory.
That's
at that
correct.
time.
That's correct. Yes, with wrapper from Jalapa. That's correct.
Right? Right.
Grown by the Olivas, yeah.
Right. And
Correct.
let me tell you something. I gotta say this. And I smoked, some very good cigars in my lifetime. I smoked some great cigars. And I think this cigar really, at that moment, kind of, there were two cigars that kind of got me thinking. That was one for sure because it was, it was so different, so complex. It was, it was like a medium strength. I mean, I don't forget the flavors because it was incredible. And that's when I started getting into, see how I can use some Nicaraguan tobacco. In 1992, I think, when the Perez started growing tobacco in Nicaragua, they moved their wrapper production to Ecuador. I was able to use that tobacco, and I always thought back of that particular cigar that we smoked, Cucho, Carlito, myself, and it was an incredible cigar, man. That's really a cigar that impressed me. And that's when I started thinking about, okay, how can I get some Nicaraguan tobacco, here in my little factory? Because in Miami, there wasn't that much coming in. And I believe it was 1990 when I first started using it in our blends in the Gloria Cubana, because at that time, I wanted to make a cigar that, that I was happy with, that I was satisfied with. And I think when I started using some of those Nicaraguan tobaccos, I started seeing a difference in what, and there was like a light that opened up and said, okay, there's another world out there besides, using tobaccos that we're using now. So I started working with a lot of Nicaraguan tobacco, which I still do. And that was always a tobacco that I kind of, even from the beginning, fell in love with. And, it happens like that. I love also Mata Fina tobacco. Every time I see a tobacco that's out there that's new, that's what's so exciting about this business, because there's always, when you think you fit the how do you say, the pinnacle, there's something always there that you can still have that enthusiasm to work with and make something new.
Yeah, that's
So,
awesome.
Ernesto, you brought back a lot of memories out, and that's what this show is about. It's about family and being open and sharing stories and letting the world know, who we are. We go through the blood, sweat, and tears, the suffering, and also the celebration. And you mentioned that particular cigar. Remember that night and Cucho sitting in his rocking chair and we spoke of that cigar. That cigar also, Ernesto, it's what always kept my memory open about that Havana seed wrapper that I felt was needed in the industry to bring back those wrappers that during that time, remember, Nicaraguan tobacco for a long time wasn't available. There was an embargo after the initial
that's correct. Yes.
revolution. So there were no wrappers available of any Cuban seed at that time. It was Connecticut, it was Cameroon, maybe Sumatra, of course. You had Aray, the Pirola farms and the Olivas. But it was that wrapper that when I went to Angel Oliva that I said, if you grew Havana seed in Jalapa and you grew shade grown, why can't you grow it in the Dominican Republic? And it was that wrapper, was that taste that was something different that contributed to cigar. And I felt also, as my upbringing, and I know yours also, that there was something that I wanted, even though it might not be my favorite cigar or my favorite wrapper. I may prefer Cameroon or Sumatra, but I know that that's a unique taste when you have a Havana seed wrapper compared to a Sumatra wrapper or compared to a Cameroon wrapper or Connecticut wrapper. It's not that one is better than the other, but it's that taste that I was missing that was my inspiration or my motivation to try to grow Havana seed wrappers in the Dominican Republic. So you and I, that cigar did touch both of our lives.
It did touch, and I remember when you I remember. I'm sure you remember when you started the farm. You invited myself and my wife. Remember, we went to your farm
Yeah,
and we
for
came
with your
back.
son. Yeah, yeah,
And
with Ernie.
and we went
Then
to.
that's the day we stopped to get that pork.
Yeah.
Maybe that wasn't
No.
such a good idea.
So I mean, I kind of saw you to a certain degree. I think the way that we are Carlitos, it's we've always had to somehow live up to our names because your father, my father. I mean, those type of people nowadays, where you go through so much. Your father, your family. Having been in Nicaragua and losing the factory, or having the factory burned down 2 times, 3 times, and still keep fighting and keep coming back and not giving up. And my father in Cuba, having lost everything and come here to United States and kind of had to start again. And this is the type of thing that in my case, and I think in your case also, we had that drive that we live through. And I think this is very important when you're making cigars, because making cigars is there's got to be a story behind it. There's got to be a reason for making it. And I think that in our case is because we lived to the hard times. We lived through the moments that other people would have given up and taken the easy way out and maybe do something else. But they kept going, and they had a dream. And I think this is very important when you're making cigars. What is it that you want to achieve? And a lot of it is to achieve personal satisfaction, that you make your fathers, your mothers, your family proud of what you're doing. And I think the coming up generation, the kids, the grandkids, they see that, and it's a gift. It's a gift, and I think that's why we do what we do, because we love it. We're not looking at what people say, the money or this. We just want to do something that we're going to be proud of, that our parents are going to be proud of, whether they're with us or not, and that our family are going to be proud of. So.
Yeah, and
Well, Ernesto, I'm very touched, and I want to say that I'm very proud of you, because listening to you is exactly what it's all about. It's that motivation, that love, and that respect for our tradition, our culture, our appreciation, and never forgetting where we come from. That's something that I repeat over and over and over again so many times. Don't forget where we come from, and that love of family. And those people that work side by side by by your father and yourself, who made cigars with rubber band, who made pyramids in a piece of paper, and artists.
That's right.
And, it's those are things that we were blessed to live, and it's what keeps us going. And and right now we're facing another big challenge. So the challenges are never going to end. But once that you go through so many failures or
That's right.
interruptions,
right.
you know that there's only one way to move, and that to move forward. And
move forward.
And and that we have no choice, because I think this is what we were put on earth for. And I absolutely agree with every word you said, and I'm very touched. And I thank you for being so open and sharing that with us.
Well, Carlito, we have to be realistic, man. I think, we're one of the few. I mean, there's not that many people, I think, in this industry that lived, from the, what this industry was like in the 70s and the 60s, and see how it's evolved, and, see the bad times and see the good times. Because let's face it, after Cigar Aficionado came out, this was a whole different industry. So, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm, knocking anybody or anything like that, but I mean, it's like it was already there, and the opportunities had been opened because of the magazine, because of the boom. But before that, there's a history that a lot of people don't know about and can appreciate. And I think there's a lot to say about that. And I don't
No,
know.
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
There's a lot
I
to
mean-
say, and there's a lot that we should never forget. And
Exactly.
I know that,
Exactly.
and I know that we keep that close to our chest and close to our hearts.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Ernesto,
Yeah.
I asked this question. We had Liana on board one of these days, and I'm gonna ask this question to you. How difficult is it for you to convince sometimes Lisette to do something, and how hard of a time does she give you on that sometimes?
We're going through that now, believe me.
I know that Lisette is tuned in because she told me she was going to be on the show, but you don't have to make it a lot, but just give us a brief,
Well,
because
I think-
listen, we already heard the Carlito Liana version, and
Yeah.
because you're more or less the same thing. So how hard is it for you to convince Lisette?
well, you know, when we started this company, one thing that I wanted was for, you know, my kids to be a part of it. You know, Lisette and Ernie, of course. I wanted them to, you know, have an input. I wanted them to feel that, you know, they were part of this company. I mean, to make this company, you know, just be about me. At the end of the day, you know, they have their own professions. You know, my daughter is a lawyer. My son, he was in finance. You know, he is in finance, I should say. And I wanted to you know, I wanted to be about them. You know, not necessarily about me. I wanted to be about them. Saying that, you know, we do have our differences with, you know, Lisette, with Ernie. But I think at the end of the day, you know, they're very smart kids. They're bright kids, and they may think I'm old-fashioned, but you know, cigar making is not about being old-fashioned. It's about history. It's about tradition. So they're very respectful when I make a decision, you know, pertaining to a blend or making cigars. You know, they argue with me about that because they don't. I've proven to them that when I come out with something, or when we're ready to come out with something, and I'm saying, look, I'm not ready. It's not good. It's not happening. Or when we make something and we put it out and then we take it out of the market, you know, they think I'm crazy. But they've kind of, you know, learned that, you know, when I do something like this, it's not that I'm crazy. It's that, you know, I know what I want to get from a blend. And basically, I'm talking about blends. So they kind of, you know, they kind of listen to me. They look at me, and they may say in the back of their head, you know, this old man is losing it. But then when you get, the success in the sales, when you get the ratings, they say, you know, the old man was right. But I try to give them a lot of leeway. You know, I try to give them a lot of leeway in marketing and finance. You know, and the way they want to go out and sell the cigars, the distribution. I mean, we've gone through so many. You know, in the 10 years we've been in business now. You know, when we started, you know, everybody thought, man, this is going to be a cake. You know, I mean, you got the you know, the Gloria Cubana. You know, you got all these Hall of Fame and all these type of things that, you know, it should be easy. But after about, you know, 3 or 4 years, they realized, listen, it isn't that easy. You know, this is a different world. The cigar industry that I grew up with, that Carlitos grew up with, and, you know, not too many people, but a lot of us grew up with, was a lot different than it is today. You know, right now, in the old days, you had a steady customer that would come in every week and buy his, you know, 25, 50 cigars or whatever. And he was looking for that cigar. You know, he wasn't really looking for anything else. Nowadays, you know, people are looking for new stuff all the time. You know, they're looking for what's new. They're looking for more upscale, I think, lines or brands. And I think that it's challenging. It's challenging. And what I've learned from my kids is, you know, you can't stand still. You got to keep, you know, even though I love, you know, working with tobacco and making blends, you know, constantly, it's a whole different dynamic the market's a whole different dynamic now. And, you know, it's not only about the cigar's got to be great, but you got to have the distribution, the marketing. You know, you got to have a lot of things that in the old days you didn't need. Or I thought I didn't need. Let's put it that way. And I think that's where, you know, where they've come in, and they've kind of, you know, set that direction for the, you know, the way the company should be going. And although we're still, you know, 10 years is to me it's a long time. But nowadays, you know, 10 years is like the not even the midpoint. I think you know, we're a quarter there, so we still got a long ways to go.
Yeah.
So.
We have some more questions. Yeah.
It's one I had to throw out there. You know, I worked with Ernesto for 3 years, and we were friends for many years. And I'm going to bring up something. Every time I would bump into Ernesto at the airport or at a meeting or something, instead of giving me anything he was working from La Gloria, he would always go and give me in a little bag 3 cigars and say, Jose, I'm working again on El Rico Habano. Tell us a little bit about why you put so much emphasis, even though La Gloria was the big thing, but you were always tweaking around with El Rico Habano. What was, how close was El Rico Habano close to you, and why?
Why was it close to me? You know, I think that, you know, we started making El Rico Habano, and that was an all Nicaraguan blend. And, you know, we used all Nicaraguan with a Sumatra wrapper. But, you know, like everything, once the boom came in, at that time, you know, when we first made it, the cigar at that time, I think, didn't get the notoriety that, you know, that maybe would have gotten nowadays, because it was a fuller body cigar. And going back, you know, to Ybor City, I remember one of the visits that I visited Cucho down there. I had a Hoya Monterey. I'm talking about 1982, 83. A Hoya Monterey, I think it was Rothschild. And that cigar kind of knocked me out, you know? That cigar just had power. And I started, you know, digging in, you know, what were they using, that type of stuff. And you know how it is nowadays. Nobody will talk about blends or tell you about tobaccos they're using. But, you know, somehow I got into finding out. So I wanted to make a all Nicaraguan blend reminiscent of that particular cigar. So at that time we used, you know, the filler, the binder, and was all Nicaragua. The wrapper, like I said before, was a Sumatra. So again, I was looking to make a full body, you know, kick in the butt cigar, and that's where El Rico, that's why El Rico came to being. Now, saying that, you know, once the boom got into effect, you know, I would say probably about 93, 94, it really started getting strong. Needless to say, there was so much demand for that tobacco that, you know, I couldn't get it. And so we stopped making that cigar. I think it was 94, 95. And then a couple of years later, we started getting more production, and we started. But, you know, and tobacco, and I remember talking to Carlito about this once in a plane. You know, with tobacco, it's a natural product, you know. So depending on the microclimate, on the soil, the care that you give it, you know, you're gonna have different strength, different taste profiles, and you have to know how to adapt that to the blend so that cigars that you are making with that blend will be consistent. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I gave you, you know, so many Rico Habanos at one time, because I know, you know, I admire your palate, Jose, and this is why we keep keeping you cigars all the time, you know. And sometimes you came back with a good review. Sometimes you said, Ernesto, you know, it doesn't taste the same. It has this, it has that. So, and I think, you know, when we worked together, we went through a lot of exercises, you know, doing different blends and smoking different blends. And because, I have something that I want to, put out there that I want people to enjoy. But at the same time, I want to be proud of what I'm doing. And when I trust somebody's palate, I want them to be part of that experience also. And I have, 3 or 4 guys that I work with. It's not all about me making it. I mean, I make the final decisions, but I do try to get feedbacks from, some of the people that work with me, because I respect their palates also.
Wow.
So.
Well, we got to grab some of the audience questions here. I'm going to pull in Fabien, who has some great questions. Fabien, can you hear us? Fabien, you are live. Turn your microphone on and ask your question. All right. Well, seems like Fabien is not with us right now. We'll move to the next question. Let's see here. There's so many of them. Let's try to pick a good one. Oh, I see George Brightman is on the line with us all. George, how are you? Hold on a second. Let's pull George on. For those who don't know George, and most of you probably do, he's probably, well, certainly one of the most respected journalists in our industry ever. He's also a gentleman and an extremely talented gentleman at that. George, can you hear us? Oh, you're using an older version of Zoom. We're gonna have to update that with you. All right, back to you, Professor.
Hey, let me just make a quick note about George there. George Brightman, when he was with Davidoff, I remember we were at a one of the RTDA shows, and he came to me. I was selling my Gloria Cubana there, and he bought 6 boxes of each size. And I looked at the guy, and George, I don't know if you remember this. I hope you're listening. I looked at the guy and I asked myself, why is this guy buying this? And I asked him. He says, well, why shouldn't I buy it? You make a great cigar. And that's why I've always respected George, because he's a really authority in this industry.
Without
a doubt, no question.
Yeah.
Oh, I can see Fabien's here. All right, Fabien, you can shoot now.
Hi, all. How are you doing?
Good.
Excuse me, but I went back to my humidor to light a new cigar. So I'm very sorry I was not online. So here I'm back. So Ernesto, nice to see you on the show. First, and hi all. We had a chance to meet each other about 1 hour in the last show in Dortmund last year. And we talk about box pressed cigars. And my question is very easy. All the cigar producers have them kind of signature, I would say. And I would like to know what is your own, in which direction you go with your cigars, and what would be for you the ideal cigar? This is my question.
The ideal cigar.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Fabian, you got cut off there for a few minutes. You want to know about why I make pressed cigars and what would be my ideal cigars?
No, Ernesto, we had a chance to talk about. I would like to know, what is your signature? What are the balance you're looking for? What is your ideal cigar? What are Carrillo cigars? This is what I would like to know.
Okay, what I always look for in a cigar is a couple of things. I want my cigars, first of all, I think the aroma is very important in a cigar. Why? Because, if you're smoking a cigar, I think you want the people that are around you to also be part of that experience. And that's why I think aroma is very important, so that they can, enjoy that aroma of the cigar. Then I look for, for me personally, it's more about complexity. I like a cigar more or less that's medium, maybe 3/4, but it's complex. Now, what do I mean by that? That means that when I first light it, I'm going to get a certain taste profile. I'm going to get maybe some of the peppery, some of the nuttiness, which I love. I love that nuttiness aroma. And then as the cigar, as you're going through the cigar, it's not a cigar that's linear. What I mean by that is, you're going to see you're going to be able to experience different taste profiles, different flavors, different strengths. This is what, I like about smoking a cigar. And, I find that, when I make a cigar that's round and I make that same blend and it's pressed, you're going to have a completely different smoke. So it's also about, experimenting with the different shapes of the cigar, the different sizes, because, needless to say, a Churchill with one particular blend, you use that same blend in a Robusto, and it's not going to be the same cigar. It's not going to taste the same. So I want the cigar smoker that when he's smoking a cigar, he's experiencing, something that is different at that particular moment, because you want that customer to come back, and when he feels like experiencing that particular moment, whether it was, with friends or in a bar or even by himself. Like, I love to smoke by myself, here in my terrace. I want him to share, I wanted to feel that same experience that he felt when he smoked the first cigar. And the ideal cigar, I'm still working on it. Let's put it that way.
I know that's the question.
That's a very, very, very good answer. I think everybody's still working on the perfection. And Fabian, thank you very much. That was a hell of a question that got us a very interesting answer. Thank you very much. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can see that every time somebody answers these questions, it's always focused at the same thing. It's always focused at emotion. It's always focused at experience. It's always focused at complexity and giving everybody those goosebumps, giving everybody the life which is behind the cigar, the life which is behind the tobacco. It's not about throwing a bunch of leaves together and selling. It's about putting your heart, your soul, your stomach into a product and trying to get the consumer to understand where you're coming from, who you are, what your past is, and where you're going with your future. So Ernesto, you were just spot on. It's that time of the day where we're going to get other emotions because it's time for Benoit's Baked. Benoit, are you on the show?
I am on the show. Happy Fuente Friday, everybody.
Happy Fuente Friday, Benoit.
Hello, everybody.
Every time Benoit gets on the show, I need to disclaim that this is broadcasted out of Switzerland, that anybody under 21 years old needs to hang up now. Benoit, over to you.
Right. So first, the good news. Today, you have to know that we made 200 meals for the hospital today. 200.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's beautiful.
That's
Thank you.
a lot of work. So the joke today, it's the story of a couple. The wife, the woman is not feeling good, so they go to the hospital to make some tests with the blood, and then 2 weeks later, the doctor called the couple back. I say, okay, you can come. I have to discuss with you. So okay, the couple go to the doctor, and then the doctor say to the couple, okay, madam, you have a serious disease. We saw with the experts, we sure then it's your last day on earth. Wow, okay, fine, thank you, doctor. So they go back to their place, and then the husband said to his wife, okay, darling, what would you like to have tonight? Would you like maybe to have a beautiful dinner, or would you like to go to the cinema, miskin, to see a good movie? And then the wife said, no, that's my last day on earth. I want to have sex. I really want to have sex tonight, right now. So the guy said, okay, darling. So they make love. Then after that, the guy smokes cigarettes. My goodness, my wife, you seal my love for all my life. You're gonna miss me. Really, I love you. Allez, good night now. And then the wife say, what? Good night? That's my last day, my last night on earth. I want to have sex, more sex, more sex. So the guy say, okay, but I'm just coming, so you have to wait a bit moment. So they wait 30 minutes, and then he goes back. They make love again and again. Then it's finished. Smoke cigarettes. Then the guy say, allez, good night, my love. And the woman say, what, good night? My last day, my last night, I want to have sex. More sex, more sex, more sex. Then the guy was become crazy and say, whoa, enough. That's enough now. We can see that you don't have to wake up tomorrow. That's it.
Oh my God.
Oh my
See you
goodness.
the next week. Happy Fuente Friday to everyone. I would like to thank Dimitri Knipper. I'm sure then he looked the show now. Dimitri, thank you for your help for yesterday. Thank you everybody. Enjoy the weekend and see you the next week.
Thank
All
you.
Be
right.
safe, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Be
you
well.
very much, Benoit. All right, Ernesto, you're witnessing firsthand the craziness that goes on this show, but we all have a lot of fun doing it, and I think it shows you how much of a tight family this all is, and how we can all just sit around the table like we would be doing together, whether it's in the Dominican Republic or anywhere else in the world. Just sit down, smoke a cigar, we talk to each other. This is the behind the scene. This is what it's all about. And time is running out. We might have just a few more minutes for maybe one or two more questions. There is a very, very good question that came in from David, actually. Maybe Melanie can read it out. What does David have to say?
This is for Ernesto or Carlito. In defining complexities of your cigars, where do you tell your smokers where the sweet spot is for enjoyment? Beginning, middle, or
Go on, Ernesto. This is your show, my friend.
Well, for me, we live in an age of instant gratification. Everybody wants everything now. They don't want to, they don't want to wait, till it's good. They want it good now. In the old days, the norm was, you light up a cigar, and halfway through, the cigar would start getting, delicious. Now, they didn't use the terms that they use nowadays, like, the creaminess and all that type of stuff. So in those days, people, and then, a quarter in, 2 quarters, oh, now that's when it's starting to get good. Now that's when it's really starting to, my theory is, nowadays people want it now. So I make sure that when you light up the cigar, it's going to, tell the story right there from the beginning. You don't have to read the whole book to know what it's about. From the moment you start reading that book or smoking that cigar, you're in for a treat. And, that's my philosophy on how I want to blend cigars. And I think people, that's the way of the world, instant gratification. And you can smoke my whole cigar, you can smoke half of it or whatever you want. But I want to make sure that, that first time you light it, it's you're in for a treat.
That's a hell of a good answer. All right. It's that time of the day, but we're going to slip in one last question from the one and only queen of cigars, Cynthia Fuente. Ernesto, Cynthia Fuente would like you to explain a special moment with her father, Don Carlos.
Okay. Well, there's...
looks like a hot spot.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. There were two very special moments. One was, going back to the RTDA. I asked Carlos Sr., I said, Carlos, I'm trying this new wrapper, and I want to say it was Connecticut or whatever it was. I don't remember that time. And I mean, we didn't know each other that well at that time, because this was back in 80, 82, something like that. And he said, well, going back to what Jose was saying at one time about the binder. And I remember Carlos said to me, look, Ernesto, why don't you try a broadleaf binder? And I did. And it completely changed the cigar that I was making at that time, the blend that I was making. And that's when the binder situation came into me, so important, the wrapper and the binder. And then the other time we were at Pasticho. Is that what it's called, Carlito, down in Dominican Republic?
Pasticho, yes, Pasticho.
Right. And, they had a little place out there that you went out to, if you wanted to smoke. And I remember I gave him a cigar, and he was smoking the cigar. And he looked at me and he said, Ernesto, this is a fucking great cigar, man. I mean, that to me was like, that to me was one of the biggest honor, or one of the biggest compliments that, I ever want to hear, because it really meant a lot to me. And then, we would hang out, we would get on the plane, we would always talk, and, I'd pick his brain. He picked mine at times. And he taught me something also very important, about respecting your brands, respecting your name. And I remember we were in his office at the Plant 3, I think it was, Carlito. And he got a call from a big distributor. I'm not going to mention names. And I remember the guy said, he's going to order, like 375,000 cigars. The guy wanted a discount. And Carlos said, there's no discount. This is my price. You want it, you take it. If you don't, there's nothing to talk about. And I'm looking at the guy, I'm saying to myself, shit, if I had an order for that many cigars, I think about, my 5%, 10%, what the hell? It's not about selling. It's about, being sure that that brand is respected and that, it has a certain price. And if people want it, that's what they have to pay for it. And I think, one of the things that I've learned in this business, everybody can sell cheap cigars. I mean, they're a dime a dozen. But to sell a cigar that has a fair price, whether it's, 6, 7, 8, 10, 20, 30, 50, whatever, that's something that has to be respected. And unfortunately, there are times when, we don't realize that sometimes to look at the short term, maybe get out of a problem, or a cash flow problem or whatever, long term, it can really hurt you a lot. And that morning over at Carlos Senior's office, I learned that, you have to, not look at the hard times, but look at the long term and know that, whatever you're doing, long term is going to pay off. And I think, nowadays, in spite of everything that's going on with this, situation in the world, us people that are producing cigars, we're in a very tight spot. We got, our people in Dominican Republic that we have to take care of, because at the end of the day, it's because of them that, we're able to, I'm able to be here. And there's a lot of things going on, nowadays that, we really have to sit back and we really have to, look at where we want to be after this passes. So, we have to really make smart decisions now, because in the future, I think it's going to be better. May not be this year, may not be next year, but eventually this will go away. And we don't want to be, with that stigma of, we had to kind of discount our cigars to get the sales there. And I think that's one of the things that I've admired so much about the Fuentes family. They always stick to the guns. It's hard, but that's where they're successful. So those are lessons that, that I learned from, and, with Carlito, I mean, we can go and talk. There's one particular, I'm not even going to get into that, but man, at that moment, I had a whole new respect for you, brother. And I'm not going to go into what we talked about, but I said, this guy's got some balls, man. I admire you, brother. I
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and
Te
only
quiero, Ernesto. Te quiero.
Ya a ti también, mi hermano.
Ernesto Perez Carillo. Ernesto, thank you very, very much. It was
Thank
a
you, man.
huge honor to have you on the show today. Ladies
Thank
and
you.
gentlemen, this is what makes this show the greatest show broadcasted in the history of our industry. We are bringing to you not one producer, another producer, or this or that. We are bringing everybody together because, like Carlito Fuente always says, this is not about cigars. This is about people, and the proof is in the pudding. This show shows the world that we stand behind what we say. It's that time of the day. Happy Fuente Friday to everybody out there. We love you. Take care of yourselves, take care of others, and see you next Tuesday for the next episode of Fuente and Meerapfel present The Professor. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Ernie. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Had a great time. Thank you.
Fantastic. Fabulous.
Very good.
Gracias, manito. Cuídate mucho. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ernesto. God bless.